Hey everyone, which of the killers of Dead by Daylight could Dexter from the show Dexter successfully kill? Dexter is a serial killer and blood spatter analyst who hunts down other killers, stopping them from ever doing it again. This is the code he lives by. We'll be assessing whether Dexter would go for each of them in the first place, as well as if he would know about their crimes based on the available evidence, and finally if he would succeed. We're considering every character's pre-Entities Realm state for this to make sure they aren't given entity buffs, and so aren't untouchable. With all this in mind, which of them could survive Dexter? Thanks to Movie Critics Club for this idea too. They made a great video of this concept, so I thought it'd be fun to do it for DBD, as sort of a Dexter fan as well. Be sure to go check out their video too, link below. No reason to go for them. Dexter has his moments of breaking his code, but for the most part he does keep it, and therefore there's a number of DBD's killers who simply wouldn't even come onto his radar, as they never killed anyone prior to the realm. They did some morally questionable things maybe, but nothing that would ever spark Dexter's interest. This consists of Spirit and Artist, the two characters who have a kill count of 0 before their entry to the trials. They don't fit the code, and there's no reason for Dexter to go for them. He would choose to spare them is our next category for those Dexter would initially investigate and go after, but something about them would change his perspective and he'd opt for sparing them. This happened a number of times in the series, typically for characters who did something in self-defense or killed someone for the purpose of protecting a family member or friend from someone far more dangerous and brutal. Wraith would fit this, I think, with him always being placed in particularly bad situations. When he's a kid, he kills 5 soldiers after his home is destroyed, family are killed, and his new mother and mentor figure Fenanya are murdered. He then goes on a decade later to try and live an honest life, working at a wrecker's yard in Virginia. Only here, he secretly works for a criminal named AZHYMOVS, who places bodies into cars that are set to be crushed. When Philip goes to crush the cars, the person inside is killed in the process, unknowingly to him. From an outsider's perspective, Dexter may initially believe Philip is complicit with these crimes, but with more research and maybe even through a discussion with Philip, he'd soon find out that he isn't, and he'd then go after the true evil in the situation, AZHYMOVS. Funnily enough, if it were to go down this way too, it would mean Philip would never enter the Entities Realm, because AZHYMOVS' confession is what causes Philip to finally snap and kill AZHYMOVS. Twins is the other character I could see Dexter sparing. He'd hear of these supposed demons living in the sewers of Marseille and investigate them, only to find out that only one of these 2 demons are even alive anymore, and they're not demons at all, but instead some unlucky twins who have been marked as monsters by the public, simply for the fact that they're conjoined. He'd be able to track any killings they have done, and see they were all made in self-defense, simply trying to survive the pursuit of the people hunting them, as well as the Black Veil. Dexter would ultimately spare Charlotte, and maybe even try his best to aid her in some way. He would go after them and succeed. So now we move on to the characters I do think Dexter would actively pursue. First, let's look at the ones he'd succeed in pursuing too, from easiest to hardest. Legion would be Dexter's easiest catch and kill, with each of them being inexperienced, sloppy, and leaving behind a bunch of evidence for Dexter to uncover. They only ever killed one person as a group in their core lore, which was a store clerk who they buried up Mount Ormond. He'd easily track down their entire night and find the body. He'd then likely go for them one by one, first taking out Frank and Julie together, followed by Susie and Joey. Joey is the only one of them I could see him hesitating on somewhat, with him seeming to be the least complicit and most innocent of the group, with clear reservations about what happened that night. There's possibility he would spare Joey therefore, but ultimately I think he would get them all. Bubba is another very easy case, with the entire Sawyer household being evidence of their crimes, as well as Bubba's. Not only do they kill, but they also consume people. Dexter could sneak into their house with ease with his techniques and skills, and sedate Bubba and set up a kill room possibly even inside of their house. A very easy case for Dexter here. Clown is a similar deal, a sloppy character who could be very easily accessed and taken care of by Dexter. Clown lives in a roaming caravan and goes circus to circus, town to kill people and take their fingers. Dexter could quite easily track him down, with Clown known to be sloppy with how he kills, leaving evidence and even witnesses in some cases. Dexter would take care of him, setting up a kill room just directly in his caravan, I think. The only issue Dexter may have is with sedating Clown, with him being incredibly resistant to his own bottles and the sedatives within them. Finding something that would work on Clown would be difficult, but then again he did straight up get access to an alligator tranquilizer one time, so maybe he'd just use that again. Trapper is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of his workers who he killed by means of caving in the mines of his estate, trapping them within. He also seemingly just killed people prior too, such as rebellious workers and even journalists who attempted to enter the estate's grounds. The main challenge Dexter would have with Evan is getting onto the estate itself, with it teeming with traps, but once he's here, I think he could take him out pretty easily. Billy would be another pretty easy kill, with him living alone on Coldwind Farm at the end of his lore. After slaughtering his family, some deputies, and some people in the surrounding area, Billy never cleaned up after any of this and actually sort of flaunted it across the farm, making it very obvious and easy for Dexter to find out about anything and investigate it. It's also an incredibly large farm. We know Dexter doesn't care for search warrants, and so would simply enter the property and find Billy. Dexter could easily grab an unaware Billy. He'd maybe hesitate with killing him, as his killing of his abusive parents and the deputies who watched on could be seen as somewhat justified by Dexter. The problem comes with his later killing of innocent farmers and surrounding workers, where Dexter would certainly draw the line and put Billy down. Nurse is a character Dexter would certainly go for, with her murdering an entire asylum's worth of patients and staff, all for the reason of her feeling superior to them, and believing she deserved a better life. Dexter could capture her quite easily, with her pre-realm self already in a very vulnerable state after her ambulance crash on the way to the hospital. She could be near to critical before Dexter swoops in. Pre-realm, she has no powers of course, so very little concerns here for Dexter too. Even if she did, I think Dexter could still fairly easily sedate her during a blink or fatigue or something. Myers would be an interesting target for Dexter. The evidence is there, and the main issue is Myers himself, a mysterious force of evil who survives bullets at the end of Halloween. Despite this, I do think Dexter could capture him. He was detained before his escape from prison, and so Dexter could surely do it too. Myers would likely be distracted with his own obsessions like Laurie, and so Dexter could stalk the stalker. Myers may be pure evil, but he could still be bound as he's just a man, but with strange abilities. Dexter could kill him, but he might come back even afterwards, so he'll have to stay alert. Hag could be a tough one, with Dexter possibly getting cursed. He would also have a bit of a tough time because all of Lisa's story happens quite remotely in a small, seemingly Louisianan village. Despite this, I do think he could pick up on a story from not Lisa maybe, but Pam and their teacher, where she was crushed during a strange accident by a coffin. He would investigate further, uncovering the dead villagers by Lisa's hand, now the Hag, and follow her to the Pale Rose, an abandoned boat within the swamp where Hag resides, sedating her and setting up a kill room here. Doctor is a character Dexter could learn of after hearing stories about Larry's Memorial Institute, which sort of garnered a reputation for horrible things. He could then investigate and would quickly find out the crazed doctor working there, Herman Carter. From here, Dexter could likely quite easily take care of him, with this being a relatively secluded facility, and Doctor being far out of his mind even pre-realm. He may need to be careful around him to avoid getting shocked, but otherwise Dexter would have a fairly easy time here I think, with Doctor more focused on his quote-unquote patience. Pig or Amanda Young was a disciple of Jigsaw, and at the time Dexter would hunt her, with her being a free agent in some ways, creating her own saw trials to force the people who partook in them deaths. Kramer himself would likely be a greater target for Dexter, but he would certainly go after Jigsaw's accomplices too, such as Amanda, especially as she rigged the trials. He could even go after her and the other disciples first. Whilst the Jigsaw killings were hard to track, with Tap doing a lot of work to find evidence, Dexter could likely get more a lot more easily, breaking into the Gideon's meat plant and other Jigsaw facilities to collect blood evidence or anything else he needs. From here he could easily try to bait Amanda to choose him for her games, only to pull a reverse on her, sedating her and setting up a kill room from where she would have held the game. Plague is one where Dexter may have a bit of a challenge, with Adiris being a public figure, the High Priestess of Babylon. At this point she wouldn't have her plague, at least not the weaponized version that she does in the realm, and with Dexter being from the modern day, it probably won't affect him much either. Therefore Dexter could either befriend her to get close to her, or simply wait until Adiris flees to the city's outskirts, to the cave she is later taken by the entity from, and finish her while she is weak from the plague. Ghostface would be debatably one of Dexter's toughest adversaries, with him being just as meticulous and careful as Dexter. The only difference is Ghosty tends to leave behind evidence at the scenes of his crimes, such as a chewed pen, and of course all of the newspaper articles he writes about himself. Dexter could track him down with meticulous work though, with there being a trail of some kind to follow. Ghosty would notice him too though I think, and it would ultimately come down to a bit of a battle of the wits. But I think Dexter ultimately wins, with Ghosty being too hung up on his reputation and having a bit of an ego. Oni before coming to the realm was just a human, although a very powerful one. He was capable of killing but potentially thousands in his journey across Japan, where he hunted down false samurai. Dexter would likely struggle to get him, considering he was always on the move, and he's incredibly strong. There's no lack of evidence, at least, though. I do think Dexter could get close enough to sedate him, with him needing to rest at some point, especially after some of his tougher fights, such as with his father Renjiro, who was also a samurai. He goes through a whole phase and seems to even black out completely potentially, so that's a good point. He'd need to do it all quickly, but it's doable. Deathslinger is a character that was widely known throughout Nebraska and the surrounding states as Mad Mick or the Deathslinger. Caleb would be quite an easy target too. Despite his intelligence and access to various contraptions like his devices and spear gun, he'd also be surrounded by his gang members, although I do think he could lead Caleb away with some bait or even a bounty job. Getting him secluded and alone where he could then strike, Caleb could be easier to take down due to his busted leg, which restricts his movement a lot. It also helps that his spear gun only has one shot before it needs to be reloaded. Trickster is a worldwide K-pop star, and so getting near to him may be difficult, but that never stopped him before, with other people of renown like Miguel Prado or Jordan Chase. No one of this caliber though, sure, but I think he could do it. Either this or he would simply track Ji-woon down during one of his kills. Ji-woon would lure fans out, kidnapping them and taking them to various secluded locations like warehouses, getting them to scream to feature in his music, and then killing them. Dexter could trail him, much like we see Yunjin do in her lore, and follow him to one of these sites, finishing him easily and using Ji-woon's own location for his kill room. Skull Merchant is someone with an incredible degree of power, being a millionaire, capable of buying up companies, killing their CEOs and scrapping them. She uses her millions to transport her base of operations to secluded locations, hunting down CEOs in costume as the Skull Merchant. Beyond all this though, she is just a human. She isn't exactly sneaky about all this, at least it's not untraceable to someone paying attention, which Dexter certainly would be. He could predict the next company and CEO she planned to kill, following her from the point of taking them, all the way out to her cabin and base where he could then make a plan to take her out, and likely succeed. It'd just be hard getting past all of the drones and scanners that she has set up. Difficult but not impossible, and I think he ultimately could succeed, being incredibly meticulous himself. Chucky would be an interesting case, but quite an easy one for Dexter once he figured out he was a living and breathing doll. Chucky is very messy and leaves a lot of evidence, and he hides in plain sight, making it quite easy for Dexter to track him. Chucky poses near to no threat if Dexter were to try and sedate or capture him, making this an incredibly easy job for him. Blight or Talbot Grimes was quite different before the realm, with him obsessed with finding it. Talbot was responsible for the deaths of hundreds due to his failed serum he tested on POWs. Talbot's mind was far gone at this point, and so Dexter could likely follow his steps from Dyer Island, where his serum was made, to the monastery and ancient school where he was later taken. It'd just be the final locating of him that might be difficult, with him going off the rails on his own crazy adventures, but I think Dexter could do it, and here capture him by some means, but likely not sedation, as Talbot would be somewhat resistant probably after all the experiments on himself. He would go after them and fail, is our follow-up for the characters Dexter would investigate, decide he does want to kill, and then go for it, only to this time fail. Houndmaster I think would actually be very difficult for Dexter, but he would try. She lives out on the seas, and she has a number of dogs protecting her, with Snug being the primary one. She's also incredibly strong herself and a seasoned pirate. Dexter could easily gather the evidence for her as she's openly a pirate and a criminal. It would be getting to her though that's tough. He'd be restricted and secluded out on her boat, and even when on there he'd have to deal with the dogs and probably the crew. And from what we've seen, dogs and animals in general really don't like Dexter, especially when he's close to their masters. I think Dexter would overextend himself in this case and end up getting caught. Waking Portia and being trapped aboard her ship and killed by her dogs, or the sea. Knight is a character Dexter would go after, but find it very difficult I think to actually get to him with him having his guards around him always. He'd also find it very hard to sedate or move Knight with him being massive and constantly wearing plate armor with barely any openings. I think he'd end up trying and failing or simply deciding against it. Huntress is a bit tough to find evidence for and track down as she lives very rurally, and even though she's attacked, the story simply comes down to legend. I do think he could find the aftermath though and track Anna down to her cabin. However, I think this is where the issues would come. Dexter would be in Anna's territory, a secluded cabin in a remote forest, which Anna knows meticulously. Anna is also a lot more resistant despite her human appearance, with her actually being a were-elk. Here he would try to sedate her, likely failing and then being left incredibly exposed and possibly hunted and killed within the Red Forest. Freddy is exactly the type of target Dexter would love to kill, with him being especially protective of children after his own tragic childhood. This, I think, would cloud his mind somewhat and make him compelled to get Freddy on his table, even if it seemed unlikely. However, he can't capture him or sedate him, as these things wouldn't work, with Freddy being a dream demon. He'd also have to fight Freddy in the dream world to truly kill him, which is intensely dangerous, but may be possible if Dexter could go in with a fearless mindset. Despite Dexter's constant insistence that he isn't human though, he most definitely is, and so would fail to kill Freddy, I think. But as we see in the 2010 films, Freddy comes back regardless. He's a character that will ultimately win one day, simply by persistence. Wesker is a character very fit for Dexter's table, with him causing a lot of harm globally, and being known to use and then subsequently toss aside people, a perfect target for Dexter. I could see Dexter underestimating Wesker and his ego though, assuming Wesker would be too caught up in his own plan to see him coming. Dexter would strike. He would fail though due to likely being incapable of actually sedating or trapping Wesker by normal means. He is quicker, stronger, and possibly smarter, and would be able to maneuver any of Dexter's approaches, likely even deciding to toy with him. Singularity would be very difficult to deal with, being likely impossible to sedate and take down. He's also very intelligent, beyond that of humans, and so Dexter would have a tough time beating Singularity. He also doesn't sleep or stop for anything, making it quite hard for Dexter to constantly be alert. Despite this, I think Dexter would make the attempt and would try his best to take down Hux. I think he would fail, however, simply being overpowered in strength and incapable of incapacitating him. He wouldn't even try to go after them. It is a category for the killers Dexter would see, and he understands he genuinely has no chance of taking them down, even with an incredible amount of planning or preparation. There are characters in DBD after all who are almost entirely immune to any form of attack doable by a human. Dexter simply does not have the means for a lot of these characters. I'll give a reason why for each though. Demogorgon, impenetrable skin. Nemesis, impenetrable skin and capable of mutating. I don't think Dexter has a spare railgun laying around. Pinhead, likely impossible to damage with a knife and also incredibly inaccessible, living in the labyrinth and probably never sleeping. Sadako, impossible to damage and high likelihood he gets cursed and dies. Dredge, impossible to damage and no feasible way to kill it. Xenomorph, extremely difficult to damage as well as capture. It also has acid blood, which would be a tough hurdle to overcome. Unknown, near impossible to catch and unlikely to be possible to sedate and kill by human means. Vecna, impossible to damage and impossible to find and capture with him traversing universes. Dracula, near impossible to damage and incredibly difficult to capture or get near to. Maybe he could sneak into his castle and try to use a wooden stake in the day whilst he's sleeping, but it's extremely unlikely. Plus it'd come back, so. Pyramid Head is an interesting one and a unique case where I actually think Dexter would initially investigate him, but possibly choose to not pursue him. Not only because he's far too strong and difficult to kill, but also because his goals somewhat align with Dexter's own. Pyramid Head's aim after all is to make James Sunderland, a killer, repent for what he's done, and to face his guilt. I could actually see Dexter just deciding to let Pyramid Head continue on, feeling a sort of affinity to him. Which killers do you think would survive Dexter? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.